There are plenty of writers who can easily describe a character and then perhaps write what's coming out of their mouths. And that's good crafting. But for we comic book creators, we've got to go the extra step. It isn't enough just to write the character. Now, whether your character is based on reality or fiction, whether you're doing a classic comic or something just straight out of your head, what you've got is a series of images that are busting through your head at the moment of creation. And the idea is to freeze an image in your head, freeze an image, and write it down on paper. Because I got to tell you, this character takes on a whole vastly different dimension when he's looking right back at you. And suddenly he's not just sparks of inspiration, bits of electrochemical data busting through your cortex. No. Suddenly he's somebody who's got more dimension. Suddenly he's somebody who's beyond just the creation of ink and paint. He's somebody who has a certain way of speaking, a certain accent, a certain way that he arranges his words and sentences. Yeah. He's become more than a character to you. He's become somebody that you almost dialogue with inside your head. Now, even if you haven't done yet, don't let the fact that you don't have an art degree or that you don't have a writing degree stop you. Okay? Don't let that stop you. In fact, don't even let the fact that you may have an injury that causes difficulty concentration or difficulty in some kind of physicality stop you. What you want to do with your life is be productive and make your mark. Because the last thing you want to leave behind is just paid bills and tax returns, the mark that you were ever here. You can and you will do more than that. Trust yourself. In case this pose looks familiar, I was looking at a picture of the Incredible Hulk when I got the idea for this drawing. See, the Outworlder is over 8 feet tall, and his head can scrape the ceiling just like the Hulk's does. Captain Hauser most often wears a flight suit, same as Lieutenant Mitchell. The aviators in Squadron Zero wear a black flight suit that can seal airtight. They are astronauts after all. And as you might guess, there is not much in the way of any insignia on those uniforms because Squadron Zero technically does not exist. It's just a piece of science fiction I thought up while reading a bunch of old ufology books. I was having difficulty coming up with a look for Janine Hauser. She works on Broadway, so you might think she'd wear trendy clothes. But she needs something more functional than dressy. Then one day, I'm looking through a TV guide and I see a picture of actress Lindsay Wagner. Most of you who are still alive in the, who were alive in the 70s know that she rose to fame then as the Bionic Woman. Now, this image right here was a perfect model for Janine Hauser. Not too complicated a hairstyle and a clean and simple dress style. You get the idea she could be drawing sceneries in her office one minute and then unloading a truck full of lumber with the stagehands the next. Her style of dress in that case becomes very versatile and very practical. In earlier versions of Outworlder, the General and the Colonel had much larger roles. In fact, they were preparing missile strikes when the Dragos came around the moon to attack. But to keep the story leaner, those scenes were cut, and now you only see them in the background at the end in the Squadron Zero Cortex chamber. There are a lot of details about the cybernauts that were cut out of this last version of the script, the shooting version. Essentially, when an Etruscan dies, everything is used. I mean everything. The meat is cut off and sent to the food preparators. Yeah, you didn't know that Etruscans were largely cannibals, did you? I mean, think about it. How many vegetables can you really grow underneath the ground? It's not easy. Most of the rest of the body is put through a process designed by Mach to build his cybernaut army. Now the frontal lobe in your the front the forwardmost section of your brain upon death is removed, and a hive module is installed so that you are connected to other cybernauts and to Monarch. Now, what was difficult coming up with was an innovative look. I have to tell you, it's not easy coming up with a cool robot. You think about it. Too much steel, skull, and bone, and your cybernaut resembles the Terminator. That's not what you're trying to go for. Too much chrome, and it resembles a Cylon. Too much molded armor, and you got the guys from the 501st Legion saying that your design looks too Stormtrooper. You need a powerful looking machine that is adaptable to many functions with mounted weapons. Notice how the cybernauts do not carry rifle or pistols. No, their weapons are mounted on their arms, just like the jets are molded either on their backs or on the sides of their legs, depending on the age of the model. I'm sure plenty of you noticed the color coding on the cybernauts. The police have blue shoulders and patches of color. Pilots have red. Infantry has green. Engineers have white. And they're only seen one time at the beginning of the movie, but Monarch's personal guards are gold and chrome silver. This is a simple drawing for the action figure design. That's why this arm here is detached from the rest of the body, and you can see the hinge area here. This, unfortunately, when it came to drawing the character on the page, it had to be done much smaller to fit in the scenes, because I'm only using an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. But what you also have to take into account when you actually draw is that your camera is only going to be able to focus on an even smaller section of the page, say perhaps 7 by 10, so you can fit it all in the scene. So you're essentially having to tighten up everything you draw, and ultimately having to draw with less detail so that it doesn't look so cluttered. Now, as you can see here in these drawings of Mach, Matrak, and General Narcissus, the characters were originally drawn to look more complicated. And complicated is fine if you're drawing on a 24 by 36 poster board. But again, if you're on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, you have to go smaller and simpler. I needed a clean and lean style of drawing the characters. I was in my final semester of graduate school at the Emerson College in Boston, Massachusetts during the fall of 1992. And before I'd leave for my 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. class, I'd watch Batman the Animated Series. You see the characters drawn in that cartoon, and they are clean and simple designs. Oh, they could have used more complicated and heavily detailed art, but they opted for a dark deco style that had its roots in the classic Fleischer Superman cartoons. You had characters drawn with few lines on backgrounds painted on black paper. When I did my drawings for Outworlder, I would scan them onto my Apple computer. Then it was a matter of opening those drawings in Adobe Photoshop CS2. What you do then is invert the colors so that the white space turns black and the black lines turn white. Then you begin zooming in on a selected area to digital paint. Hey, I'm not great with computers. I'll be the first to admit that, but I still came up with some usable results. One thing you want to do is put in a scale so that you can see the height of each character. This way you can tell who is 3 feet tall and who is 6 or more. You only see these characters in Drakkar behind laser webbing. You can see evidence of mutation, bone disfigurement, and bulbous skin deformities. In case you're wondering, these are the characters who have to dig the killing trenches every few months. Hence, the shovels. Now if you take a look here very closely, you'll notice that Dr. Froschach here, count his fingers. That's right, he has 6 fingers. A lot of scientists, engineers, various technicians, those requiring more dexterity were genetically designed to have 6 fingers. Now you take a look at the net director and his staff here. They only have 5 fingers and they're not quite as tall in stature, but they are extremely technical. And part of the reason they're so small, or bred to be so small, so they can climb underneath these consoles down here and do all kinds of repair and upgrade work when it's necessary. Now this is where proportional drawing comes into play, and Mock seems to grow and the Nitruscans around him seem smaller. I tried a few forced perspective drawings, but those did not come out quite well enough. The details in the backgrounds just seem to jumble together. She only gets a moment at the end, but Diva is going to start a lot of conjecture. Keep in mind that she was designed while I was living in Europe during the late 1980s. So she's not going to wear torn jeans and a t-shirt like some grungy 90s chick. European women, especially Germans, often looked very well dressed in the 1980s. Their hair was beautifully brushed and their clothes were very elegant. Now those of you alive and living in Europe in the 1980s might have seen what women in the heavy metal music community were wearing. Everything was tailored, whether it was the outfits, the jewelry, the gloves, or the boots. The trick was drawing this particular look. What you'll see about Diva in Outworlder 2 is that she comes from both a military and creative arts background. So when she takes her galvo-biological form, seen here, she does not want to be wearing or looking like every other woman that is from her planet. In fact, she changes her look from scene to scene as if she's constantly evolving. Now, I'm not a fashion designer. If I was, I would not be shoving 5,000-pound cargo containers off jets and onto trucks. So many of you might look at some of Diva's outfits and think that I have files of model sheets on her. Not really. Others of you might wonder who inspired Diva and where so much of her came from. Well, she knows who she is, and right now she's probably watching this with her friends in between jam sessions. At present, the only one who can stand living with an old grouch like me is my black 1994 Pontiac Firebird Formula V8. And yes, when Coalbringer or Diva morphs into their Starship mode, it is my 19-year-old car that is the inspiration for that. I went through quite a number of ideas for the Dragos. I did not want it to look like a big gray lumbering carrier. And I did not want it to be mistaken for a Klingon bird of prey from Star Trek 3 or 4. Keep in mind that when I thought up this starship back in 1988, I was watching Search for Spock and Voyage Home on VHS and thinking I needed a vastly larger ship. In fact, Star Trek's Klingon bird of prey could easily fit inside one of the Dragos' landing bays. This is a supercarrier, and it's supposed to look organic. One section of the ship blends neatly into another. And I did numerous drawings back in the early 1990s and had wanted to do a live-action Outworlder movie. So I built this as a special effects model. As such, there are small hatches on the bottom to fit in 9-volt batteries for self-contained power. I have a few other models boxed up in the basement from the, you might say it's a special effects movie that never got made. Unfortunately, both my budget and my location are far too small to accomplish what I wanted to. And here I was looking forward to making myself an Outworlder suit and then raising the floor 2 feet so my head would scrape the ceiling during filming. I never did find the time to make that suit, but maybe someone will for the next Comic-Con. This maquette was made back in the 1990s. I tried many times making one out of cardboard with screws or hinges in the knees, elbows, shoulders and the like. But what often happened was the cardboard version kept falling down or falling apart. So one day I'm in Toys R Us to buy some model glue. And in the next aisle this kid is screaming that he wants a Silver Surfer doll, and his mother is explaining that she cannot afford it. So this nasty kid throws the doll down on the floor, cracking it severely. The kid is screaming, the mother is aghast, and here comes the store manager. And the Silver Surfer doll is lying face down with cracks in its nose, forehead, and chest. So the store manager and the mother are hashing it out. The mother does not want to pay for the toy her nasty child broke. The store manager is trying to maintain a professional decorum and calm the situation. So I pick up this broken doll, and I'm thinking, with all these cracks, he will never be Norrin Rand again. And I only have a few bucks left in my pocket. Payday is for a few more days. So I asked the store manager that if she can take a few bucks off, I can buy the doll and repurpose it. Toys R Us managers are good people, and they know when a sound solution presents itself. So she took a couple of bucks off, let me buy the doll and the Tesser's model glue, and I brought it all home. Now it's a matter of patching up all those cracks and then using a Dremel sander to smooth down the glue. It's not long before I add some details to the head and shoulders and then begin painting the doll. A week later, I have a foot-tall Outworlder doll that is somewhat posable. He's been in this plastic case for almost 20 years, and I use him from time to time in the studio to draw and paint with. If you notice, off to the left is a maquette version of the Starship mode. And yes, it looks surprisingly like my own car. I built that one completely out of cardboard, and if you're wondering why it's so smooth, again, Dremel sander. One of the best pals you'll ever have if you're a sculptor is a Dremel sander. It does a fantastic job smoothing down details for you. Yeah, it's too bad I don't live in Los Angeles, because I've been to some of the fantastic shops and art supply stores that they have there. And you can literally buy everything you need there to make your own stop-motion animation dolls. And these dolls are capable of a full range of movement, and can be scaled with diorama sets that would look awesome. Yeah, too bad I cannot afford a building big enough to live and work out of, or perhaps Outworlder could have been a stop-motion movie. Not that I could ever do as good a job with stop-motion as Willis O'Brien, Ray Harryhausen, George Powell, or Tim Burton's crew. But that doesn't mean that stop-motion is going to ever go out of style, because there are some terrific artists still using the method. CGI has not taken over everywhere, and nor should it. Currently, I'm 63 drawings into Outworlder 2, and I should tell you that the art in this sequel looks quite a bit different than what you saw in the first one. Beyond just the drawings, the painting technique will be different. I'll be using some digital paint, some watercolor, and for gritty detail I'll be using watercolor, colored pencil, like I did in the last one. But there won't be nearly as much black ink as there was in the last one. I want a larger color palette so that the audience doesn't get bored looking at it. Each Outworlder graphic novel, as I see it, should be different than the previous one, better than the previous one, more colorful. And perhaps this time in 2016, we can all see it. Until then, fellow Gothamites, maintain your health. We'll meet again. Good day.